A sequel to a video game can be the thing that either makes it or breaks it as a franchise, with many games coming out with extremely interesting ideas or mechanics, but never being able to follow through with it, be that by being more of the same, being completely lost in where to take the story, or just chasing current trends in video games, leaving behind what everyone loved about the original, which is something I spoke about in one of my previous videos, 5 sequels that couldn't live up to the original. And although there are definitely more that I can and will talk about on this channel, today I'm going to talk about games that didn't just live up to the original, but surpassed it, making itself the staple of the franchise. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to Grumpy Bear Gaming for suggesting the video topic. So without any more rambling from me, here are 5 sequels that improved on the original. Assassin's Creed 2, developed and published by Ubisoft. Now, I know Ubisoft have taken a much less than graceful fall from the top over the last few years, but there was a time when the games they put out were really good, and one of their better ones was Assassin's Creed. Yeah, there was some clunky mechanics, the writing was a bit off, and I feel pretty confident in saying most people couldn't care less for the sci-fi stuff. But everything else was really interesting at the time, and the game sold really well, so when the second got released, they already had a really solid foundation to build on, and they got the formula so spot on, even Plankton wanted to steal it. Ezio was a cool, calm and sexy bundle of pixels, and his age and demeanour made him way more relatable. His quest for revenge produced a much more compelling narrative. They added broader mission types and side missions that added depth and variety, with an in-game economy so you could purchase weapons, armour and renovations for your villa and the surrounding area. The combat system was way more refined, with extra weapons and maneuvers to make fighting feel way more fluid. Even the core mechanics of parkour and climbing, which was already pretty great and the main draw of the original, was improved upon. Polishing animations to make it feel smoother and more intuitive, and picking Italy for the setting for the second game was the perfect choice for freerunning. The architecture there really is extremely climbable, and places like Venice and Florence are so much more recognisable to a broader audience, adding to the game's immersion. Assassin's Creed 2 released in 2009, which was perfect for a game like this to get popular. Parkour's popularity was on the rise, and the hardware of the 360 and PS3 was just capable enough to make this experience as smooth as possible. I remember when I first got my hands on this game, I spent hours just running and climbing, spouting off random Italian phrases and genuinely feeling like I had some sort of interest in history because of it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one like that. Deadrising 2, developed by Blue Castle Games and published by Capcom. Now, I will admit, Deadrising was already a pretty fun game, with clear inspiration from Dawn of the Dead, and its self-referential humour was amazing, and its gameplay made it stand out amongst what was slowly becoming a very oversaturated market of zombie media. But there was a lot of jankiness that came packaged with it. Story-wise, they're both in the group of campy B-movie horror, but 2 comes with a bit more player urgency and a more empathetic main character with Chuck Green, since he has a young daughter infected with a zombie virus and needs a drug called Zombrax to help stop the infection from spreading. But that's not to say it's lost any of its humour though. Ridiculous outfits can still be found all over the map, and the psychopath side missions are still just as wild and hilarious, and references can be found all over, calling back to all different types of media that has been used to inspire this game. But along with the improvements to the writing, the gameplay got a huge tune-up too, with one of the most noteworthy implementations being the addition of combo weapons, allowing you to create some of the most wildest weapons you could ever dream of, and the ability to play in co-op, allowing you and a friend to team up and go on one of the greatest zombie slaughters you could imagine, especially with the environment now being set in Fortune City, a casino town with an endless sea of weapons to find, food to eat, and outfits to try on. I've always loved cheesy horror films and shoestring budget B-movies. Stuff like The Evil Dead and Killer Clowns from Outer Space will forever be on the top of my most favourite movie lists, and Deadrising 2 captures that essence so well. From chopping down zombies with a lawnmower to beating them with a handbag in your favourite crop top, it's a standout title that has never really been matched since. Red Dead Redemption 2, developed and published by Rockstar Games. Although the original Red Dead Redemption was already a massive improvement over Red Dead Revolver, I think the second deserves to be highlighted, since it managed to improve on what was already a pretty phenomenal game. The wilderness and wildlife in this game is so varied and detailed. You can almost smell the horse dung coming out of your screen. And hunting and fishing are little side objectives that you can genuinely get lost in for hours. The NPCs are so alive that it really feels like they have their own lives going on. You can engage and interact with pretty much anyone you meet, and whether it's the main cast or the side characters, they're brought to life with superb writing and voice acting. It's so easy to become personally invested in the lives of these people within your gang, and gameplay-wise, there just isn't a better way to live out your Wild West fantasies. Be that going on the run from the law, robbing wagons and trains and tying victims to the track, or working for the sheriff, lassoing criminals and turning in bounties. You could even just work in your camp, feeding the horses or gathering food, then spending a night in the saloon and getting beat up by the bartender. With all this being accompanied by absolutely stunning graphics and cinematic cameras, you feel completely immersed in your very own John Ford or Sergio Leone movie. This is all without even mentioning the little secrets there are to be found within the world. From South Park references and Bigfoot, to serial killers and UFOs, there's always something new to find. It's not often I find a game that hooks me enough to play from start to finish without taking at least a week's break in between, especially as big as this, but I was in deep playing this. It's so engrossing and engaging, and Arthur's story is so brilliantly written. This is a game I know I will come back to and experience again and again over the years. Saints Row 2. Developed by Volition and published by THQ, Saints Row 2 took the open world gameplay of its predecessor and added in a big old batch of completely mad, ditching the label of generic GTA clone and standing on its own 2 feet, wearing nothing but clown makeup and a G-string. To start with, character customization in Saints Row 2 is as diverse as the toppings at your favourite pizza place. Unlike the first game, where you could only choose a male protagonist in typically average at best clothing, the sequel lets you create a character that's almost anything you want. Even clothing items like shirts and jeans can be altered in the way you wear them. Want to run around Stillwater as a smartly dressed kingpin in a $1,000 suit? Go for it. Or have a clown-faced mohawk sporting gangster in a tutu? You do you, my friend. The story in Saints Row 2 also steps up its game. The original was your typical gangs and crime affair, whereas Saints Row 2 gives us a tale of betrayal, revenge, heartbreak, and a healthy dose of absurdity. You're rebuilding the 3rd Street Saints and taking down its rivals with the kind of over-the-top antics that would make even the Wayans brothers or Kevin Smith have a chuckle. The contrast between gut-wrenching character deaths or grand plot reveals and spraying homes with a septic truck or walking through the streets flashing old ladies is blended together shockingly well. Speaking of which, the activities in Saints Row 2 are as wild as the Thornberrys. Ever dreamt of committing insurance fraud or racing a burning ATV? No? Well, the developers did, and it's fantastic. The game never takes itself too seriously and doesn't expect its players to either. And there's so many secrets and Easter eggs hidden throughout the map that you'll be searching every nook and cranny on the off chance something could be hiding there. Although some may see this game as juvenile or silly, I loved it when it originally released, and shouldn't be seen as anything more than a silly and fun experience, and the soundtrack is absolutely killer. Resident Evil 2. Developed and published by Capcom, Resident Evil 2 is often referred to as the best game in the franchise by fans, and a huge improvement on 1 for many reasons. First of all, the second game expanded the narrative and gameplay significantly. While the original game had players navigating the spooky Spencer mansion loaded with more traps than Home Alone, Resident Evil 2 upped the ante with an entire city overrun by the undead, which, unless your dad happens to be Scrooge McDuck or Daddy Warbucks, is a much more familiar setting, and it creates a lasting and haunting image in the player's head as you pass through the empty streets with shops left barren and cars burning brightly in the background. The characters in Resident Evil 2 are also much more developed, and the voice acting, although still has some weird lines, it's delivered so much better. Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield are relatable heroes with personal stakes in the story. Leon's first day as a cop quickly devolves into a chaotic nightmare, and Claire, in search for her brother, delivers a fresh perspective on the whole narrative. Gameplay improvements are another main reason for the game's positive reception. The inventory system and the introduction of more varied puzzles kept players engaged and challenged, and the graphics, even by late 90s standards, looked fantastic, making those zombie encounters all the more terrifying. The original game had its moments too, and neither of them have particularly aged well, but for the standards of the time, Lego bricks had never been more terrifying. Finally, the atmosphere for Resi 2 is spot on. The sound design, creepy environments, and unexpected scares create a sense of dread that lingers, and there's so many scenes that are still talked about to this day. Although I was still quite young when this was originally released, I did play it a lot in my teens, and I still love it now. But if you've never played it and find it's kind of inaccessible due to its age, then the remake is the perfect way to experience it in the modern day. So that's 5 sequels that improved on the original. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. It helps me out with the algorithm gods. And if you know of any other games that improved on the original, let me know about them in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video.